I'm Michelle with Michelle Loves Books. Welcome back to my channel. This month, September, I really didn't read that much at all. Kind of going through some stupid reading slump, and actually in August, I kind of already did say that I didn't think I was going to read as much, but I didn't think I would only read one book. Actually, at the time that I'm filming this, I did actually finish one other book. So this was kind of gonna be like my September wrap-up, but I actually have a different wrap-up video planned to talk about some other stuff. So, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This was the book of choice for the Dark Academics Book Club, and I really wanted to talk about this book because it was so good. Also, I've been kind of messing around with this idea of bringing The Sims 4 into booktube. And so this is kind of my first big build to kind of sort of show you what I have in mind for future content. But I basically built the house, the Doyle's house, from Mexican Gothic. So I wanted to show you how I made the Doyle's house and the characters from this book in The Sims 4. I read this book as an ebook and I gave it 5 stars. I loved this book. I kept updating on Facebook with like lines that I just thought were so amazing, and I was just like, I cannot wait to talk about this book. I really enjoyed it. This book takes place in southern Mexico, and it follows Noemi, who is sent to check in on her cousin Catalina. By the way, I love their names in this. I think Catalina is just like such a pretty name, and so is Noemi. So Catalina was an orphan, and Noemi and her father, I guess they kind of take her under their wing, and Noemi and Catalina grow really close as children. Catalina ends up marrying an English gentleman named Virgil Doyle. They live at this old, dilapidated mansion on the outskirts of this small town. The house sits on top of silver mines that the Doyles have been mining since the 1800s. So they used to be really rich. There's like a whole family lives at this mansion. They tell Noemi and her father that Catalina has tuberculosis. While it seems a bit strange, they also ended up receiving a letter from Catalina that had very strange, like rambling and odd message. So Noemi goes to this house called High Place, and there is the story of this dark, Gothic, historical horror. I was absolutely floored where the author took this book. And I just loved it so much. There's like so many different layers to it too, which I will go into as I go into some spoilers. And I will forewarn you before I go into spoilers if you have not read this book yet. I also enjoyed the pacing and the writing a lot. I know that she's criticized a little bit that the writing's not great, but I personally don't see a problem with it. Also, I'm not like an English major. I don't know if that makes the difference, but I didn't find anything wrong with the writing. I thought it was great. And that is not me throwing shade, by the way. I think that that's how it came out. I just wanted to point that out if you have heard that as a negative opinion. I just think that things pop out more to you when you just studied a particular subject and can criticize things that others just wouldn't have picked up on, is all. Anyway, I really didn't know a whole lot going into this book, and I feel like that's probably the best way to approach this book. I feel like most scary, spooky books, or thrillers, like you really don't want to know much more than that going into it. Next up, I'm going to be giving spoilers as I go into the Sims speed build. So I'm really sorry, because if you wanted to see it but not be spoiled for this book, there was really no avoiding it. Once you see what I've done with the place, I feel like it would spoil a big reveal for you. Last warning, if you have not read this book yet, you will want to click away. So as you watch this build, there are a few things that I really wanted to comment on because I'm really curious to see like what y'all thought of these things too. I think the one thing that I really wanted to comment on is Howard Doyle and his shameless racism. Despite living in Mexico and profiting off of the land, he utterly refuses to commingle in any capacity than to basically just use the people who used to work for him and their corpses. It's just, Howard Doyle is just utterly disgusting. I have never read racism like this before. The setting is in the 50s when racial slurs and commentary and like the whole culture around racism was just different then than it was now. Being that you kind of just have to accept that people are racist. Howard, of course, is much older, and therefore I believe his racism and his idea of social norms is even still different and just runs deeper from an older time. I thought that the dinner scene was just really something else though. The way that he engaged Noemi in that discussion, starting off from this starting off as though he was interested in what she was doing, and then launching into, it was almost kind of like a compliment, but in a shaded way, of the difference between Noemi and Catalina's skin tone. And then it was kind of like, okay, I know where we're going with this. I really don't know anything about anthropology, so I thought that that was actually kind of enlightening, the whole discussion at dinner too, because if you don't know anything about anthropology, then this conversation basically explained it. So that conversation turned into this indisputed scientific evidence and anthropological studies, which Noemi is studying, and that's her major, that back up his claims. Therefore, I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying that in his mind, the way he knows things, the way he understands the world and social norms, is that it's no longer an opinion or a bias or generational or societal or social bigotry. It is in fact scientific, and therefore denies his culpability of being a racist. I don't know how often we actually get to really kind of understand, not that we could really understand why people think this way. Actually, it kind of makes a little bit more sense than the way other people think, just being racist for other stupid reasons. I was just really impressed that, because I usually read stuff that's always trying to, not be racist. Plus I read a lot of fantasy and stuff, so I really don't come across this kind of thing, this type of thought process regarding racism. Unfortunately, I actually have met one other person that thinks this way, and there's absolutely no changing their minds, no opening up their minds to help them accept things and accept other people, because for them and their thought process is that it's not a thing to accept. They're perfectly open-minded. They don't have anything wrong with anybody. These are the scholarly types who know because they're intelligent and well-read. It's the facts. It's baffling, and it's completely based on old thought in my mind. So I guess just overall, I really wanted to talk about this, not because I want to express that I don't agree with it or anything like that, because obviously I was just really impressed that we got to talk about anthropology. It really got us to understand Howard, and also it's kind of actually relates to the next point that goes into Howard and his mushrooms. It actually kind of weaves itself together. So the mushrooms and the incest and all this plant life knowledge, and how Silvia, the author, blended it together and adapted Howard's expertise of anthropology and the nature of fungi, mushrooms, and soil to create his family. It was so weird. It's weird in a really gross way, but it's so based in science that I'm floored. And it's so clever in a really weird, gross way. So I love it. I really expected a book that was going to have ghosts or demons or something that we've seen before, or kind of can easily see the leap from a ghost story. But what we have is this genius, clever mashup of science and anthropology and horror. I thought it was just amazing. So I was going to show you the build as I kind of just yammered on here about my thoughts. But I decided that I had a little bit more to talk about the house as it went up, as I build it up. So I had this image in my head of the main hall, the entryway just being a wide open, really tall ceilings, and the hallway around the edge of the main hall leading up to the bedrooms. This house, although it is a mansion, is at the top of a really tall hill, and it was built in the 1800s. And I'm really not too sure about architecture terminology and recognizing styles and eras and regions where certain styles would have been prominent in certain areas. You know what I'm saying? But I imagine that this would feel a bit European because Howard Doyle did not come to Mexico for the culture. He came for the silver and the wealth. So he wouldn't care to have a home that looked like it belonged. Granted, I have no idea what this would have looked like, by the way. I did try to do a little bit, very, very briefly, a little bit of research, but it was really hard to really even know what to search for. And I had it in my head, and I kind of feel like sometimes things are just better organically, and maybe it'd be really interesting to try to do a deeper dig. Families like Howard Doyle's family is nothing new. A lot of Europeans went to Mexico and mined and lived there and everything like that, and then they moved up to California and all that stuff and followed the gold rush. So European as it is, likely a bit Victorian with a tall, skinny style. I imagined really like tiny and cramped hallways, small rooms, although I made the rooms a bit too small. I could barely fit a bed in there. By the time I realized it, I really couldn't adjust it. It would have just thrown everything off too much. So technically I imagine the rooms just a little bit bigger. The house had to be very dark. I definitely wanted that very like Gothic feel, which Gothic it's like medieval and Victorian eras, I believe. But the house had to be really dark with old wallpaper, no fresh paint, because I feel like they always use wallpaper. Actually, I thought it was really interesting too, because there is a small discussion when Noemi first gets there and first sees Catalina, explores going to see the doctor. She actually thinks about potentially being what is making Catalina sick. I really liked that. Another touch of her practicality and her knowledge. I can't remember at what time period. I do believe that maybe it was early 1800s. In Europe, they discovered an ingredient that they put in this color, or this dye, that they used to color a lot of different things, but they colored all of this wallpaper. I kind of feel like it was a specific color of dye, like maybe like the rich greens and blues, because there was like such a rich color to it. I can't remember. Basically, this dye was what was making everybody very sick, and people were dying. By the time they had figured out what it was, hundreds of homes had been covered in this wallpaper. I saw that in a documentary last year, actually. I found it really cool to have that connection there. I love that The Sims has all of these textures to add cracks and water stains and dirt marks and holes in the walls and cobwebs. It was absolutely essential in making this house, because this house has got to be nasty. It took me forever to add all of the detail all over the house. I wanted it to be noticeably heavier in Howard's room, and the closer that we got there. Noemi's room actually has the least amount. Since I feel like the Doyles were trying to appease her and send her on her merry way, they wanted to put her up in like the nicest room they could, since they're trying to convince her that all was well. So with the wallpaper and most of the rugs, I was trying to bring in that European stately feel. And also the paintings on the wall, I wanted it to feel very Victorian and older. They are absolutely not going to have anything modern or modern to the 50s. And the paintings, we'll actually get to those in a minute. I really love the Spanish red clay tiles. I just had to use them. I kind of imagine that maybe they wouldn't have used the red tile, but we're making it work because I really wanted to use them. Because I still wanted it to feel like this house definitely was still in Mexico. I don't know why Mr. Doyle has them. Maybe because he just couldn't import tile or wood from England back in 1800s when he came. So they didn't have anything else available, and therefore they were stuck with red clay tiles. So it serves for the Spanish and Mexican feel of the decor. Furthermore, the lighting. There was only a few lamps in this house. I basically chose them because they were just too perfect and dated well to keep the feel. But the overhead lights are chandeliers of candles. Florence says to only use the lamps and candles, no electricity, which brings me to the lot traits. This is so cool that you can add lot traits to this game. So the traits to this house are cursed, electronics don't work well, there was something else. Oh, I think critters. I've never seen critters in this, but I did find in debug items that there was a mouse hole. So now I'm wondering if you add this trait and you like maybe have a dirty lot, if bugs and things will come into your house. I've never seen it, but I'm really interested to see if they have it Because in the original Sims, do you remember, I don't know if you played the original Sims number 1, if you didn't put like a floor tile down and it was just grass, bugs would crawl on the ground. So at some point in the Sims sometime, there used to be bugs. Anyways, so also because of this house, there's absolutely no TVs, no radios or computers. Mr. Doyle hates noise. So they have a very quiet house, which drove Noemi crazy. So Howard's room is at the top, and he has a master suite private bathroom, larger than all of the other rooms probably put together. He's got a very stately bed and double doors, kind of like a king, because I truly feel that that's really how he sees himself. I really think that he believes that he's better than everybody in a very god-like way, especially since he found a way to cheat death and create freaky fungi children the way he does. I think it suits him well. There's Francis and Florence's room. It was meant to be Florence and Virgil's room on the same floor. Since they're the closest to Howard, they tend to be the ones that wake up with him and kind of take care of him. And Francis's room is down the hall from Noemi's in the book. And then Catalina's room seems like it's further away than I put it in this house. Plus, it was kind of hard to picture exactly where her room was. Maybe it was on another wing, I don't know. Plus, I think that in the book, this house is probably a lot bigger. I feel like there has to be rooms for like servants' quarters or like a servant's house on the property. There's also 2 maids that live there, and maybe another one they kind of talked about, but I don't know. They weren't super significant. I think I also chose a little bit too small of a lot, which is all good. I don't care that much. So moving on to the outside, I didn't want to make the house look too much like a castle with a round room. I don't really know what these things are called. Does it start like with an S, like a spindle thing? I don't know. But these like rounded rooms, they kind of make it look like a castle. I really wanted to stay away from making it look like a castle, but I think with what I did with this place that we're still safe. Like if there was another one, no, that would not work. But so I think that we're still safe, and I still think that it adds some interest. As Lil Simsy says all the time, I really suck at adding interest to my builds. I'm getting a lot better at it as I watch a lot of her builds though, and just kind of mess around with stuff. Anyways, the roofs are really freaking hard, by the way. Anyway, it still makes it look pretty gothic. I didn't want any porches because I wanted this property to maintain a certain severity, and I wanted to stray away from anything that really made it feel more comfortable place to just hang out. There is a couple sitting rooms inside, but they're very dismal and not welcoming. They're better served for solitary sitting and reading. So wow, these guys are gonna be so bored. Except Francis, I guess. He can go scavenge for stuff. I did give him the trait for wanting to be an herbologist where they collect. He likes to collect different things, plants and things like that. So I felt like that fit his personality. So he will enjoy going outside and looking for things buried in the ground. So the dining room. So we have this huge stately dining room. It's traditional to have a dining room, and they have servants to prepare meals, trays and things. So it worked out as I laid down the walls and considered the doors, that I made like a side entrance, which I call this a servant's hall. It is a way to the kitchen so that they don't disturb the meal or whatever. I wound up putting portraits in the dining room. I don't know where else to put them. I kind of forgot when Noemi got the lowdown on close family relationships and the story of the other woman who had died by killing herself. I can't remember her name. She was like married into the family or something, right? I really wanted to find like a family tree of this creepy incestuous family as well. But I couldn't, and I could not really remember whose mama's mama. Anyways, so that's where we see the resemblance to what's happening to Catalina. Also, I think that these portraits, the pictures, are supposed to actually move. So it kind of adds to the haunted bit that we kind of feel about this house. Back to the wallpaper in Catalina's room, by the way, her room has yellow wallpaper. It's the closest I could find to yellow, but it's a bit of an homage to the yellow wallpaper book that I also just read recently. If you don't know, it's about a woman who has a bit of a mental breakdown and she can't stop staring at this yellow wallpaper. It seems to move, and I do believe that Catalina, in addition to hearing moans, she does mention this yellow wallpaper and how it moves. So I was kind of excited to throw that in there. Anyways, I had to point that out in case you didn't notice. So one last thing about the house, I added a hidden door. Oh, wallpaper. So back to the wallpaper in Noemi's room, I found a green wallpaper. Now I wish I could have gotten it to match the cover in intensity, but I bet if you put like a dark filter over it, you can make it look super like that dark rich green. So I found a green wallpaper to go in Noemi's room at this house. So one last thing about the house, I added a hidden doorway inside the house that goes to the mines. The old washed up creepy silver mine tunnels, I tried so hard to make the tunnels that make an escape, but I just couldn't do it. The game just would not let me because of how I built up the terrain. It only lets you, it only let me go down one level, and then I tried to build it over and then go straight down. It's kind of hard to see the basement levels. Anyways, it doesn't really matter that much. They're there, we're pretending. So I did make a separate tunnel from the outside that kind of tunnels underneath as well. So we're pretending that they connect. Or maybe they had a cave-in. The mines had a cave-in. Anyways, so on the outside of this house, I had a hell of a time making a semi-path up the hill to put enough steps to make it look rough and dilapidated. I also wish they had some broken steps. Oh, they sort of kind of do. They have like these linoleum tiles that are kind of icky looking, but I just didn't feel like linoleum really goes outside. So I kind of carried that red brick back outside, and I feel like maybe back in its day it was this beautiful winding staircase that went up to the mansion, but since it's been abandoned pretty much, it has fallen to pieces. So that was kind of my idea going behind it. I also tried to find the debug log. I've seen somebody use it to make really cool like wooden organic pathways. That would have been probably best, but I could not find it. But whatever, I feel like this is really cool too, and again with the red clay. So also I was super excited that they added glow mushrooms. I think this comes from Glimmerbrook and the magical world. Literally, that is what spawned this whole idea to build this house, is when I realized that they had glowing mushrooms, and then I read the book and I was like, oh, I can do a Sims build. So this just makes it so much more than all of the other things and more authentic. So I added these mushrooms and some glowy patches periodically. I wanted the mushrooms toward the back of the house and the areas that Noemi wouldn't have gone until later. Again, if I had a bigger lot, I probably would have really made a proper graveyard. I have this woodsy wild brush in my head, but we're also limited on plants and rocks and things. As many useless chairs and tables, I wish we just had a few more landscaping items. So there's this tiny disheveled graveyard here on the side near the escape exit to the mines. I had so much fun doing this, and I am running into some issues as I try to film my builds. So OBS is really the best software to use it with, and I played around with it for hours and I just cannot get the settings right. It just does not work right. So I really feel like it's probably my computer as well. Maybe my laptop just can't run it. Zelda, and remember I talked about doing that? I haven't talked about it since because I had to give it up because I just cannot. Been running into iMovie running really slow, but I don't know if it's because of QuickTime files just being really difficult to handle. So then when I put them into iMovie and try to edit them, iMovie's just like glitching really bad when I try to edit them. So it's It's been a pain and it really sucks because I want to do really cool Sims builds and like comment as I build instead of afterwards and then trying to make it all match together. Okay, so I also wanted to build the Sims. So we have Howard. He has boils on his face. His traits and aspirations are family tree. Shoot, I forgot. So I'll have to insert them here. With his attire, with the clothing, I had the idea that the Doyles are broke. They used to be rich, so at one point, way back in the day, they had money and they dressed nice. They have not been able to buy any new clothes, really, and they can't afford to go shopping. So their clothes would be older and outdated styles, drab colors. I was going for a bit of a dingy and worn out look. There's not much in the way of like clothes with stains and rips and holes in them. Howard stays in bed most days because he's sick. However, nowadays we would just sit at dinner in our PJs, but back then that would not have happened. So I kept that in mind as I chose their outfits. Catalina as well is in bed mostly, and I wanted to give her a look that suggests that she's sweeter and a little bit more innocent and reserved. Francis has an outdoors look. Even his formal attire is really not so much because he really has no need to get dressed up. Florence has drab, stark clothing and she's a severe woman, and I think her clothing really reflects that. All business, no personality. Virgil is a bit more stylish. He's young and handsome. He had to be charming and have something to drag in a rich girl for his evil plans. So he looks a bit better off than the rest in his more polished clothes. But he's just as broke. Maybe he does have a way of making a little bit of money. His clothes still needed to be a little bit outdated. I especially liked the top hat and the long coat ensemble. That's how I see him. I couldn't picture his everyday outfit. I imagine that he's the sort that wakes up and puts on a suit every day, but I didn't want a perfectly polished and shiny suit that looks like he's off to a wedding. He also needed to look like he probably takes longer than me to do his hair, and that he's a pompous ass that will take a moment every time he catches his own reflection to smile at himself. Lastly, Noemi. Now, she is a city girl and I was kind of in a rush. I really had to have the red dress on the cover, but she wouldn't wear that every day. She also would be dressed impeccably with the latest fashions and be just modest enough to be a good smart girl, but just a touch of sexiness. So I started really considering her wardrobe, but it's tough finding the right styles from the 50s, and also not really an expert on the matter. The red dress that's the closest to the cover is too short, and it's really not the right shade. But what are you gonna do? I ended up having to finish up quickly. I selected things by the color red and just tried to make a quick decision and choose outfits already pieced together. But whatever, it works, I guess. I usually spend a lot of time making my Sims. I feel like their clothes say so much about them. Finally, that's all. And if you play The Sims and wanted to download this lot or these Sims... Post-editing self here. Sorry, this video quality is absolutely horrible. I cannot believe that I actually used to film my YouTube videos on this computer, because like, what even is this? Anyways, I just had to throw this in there super quick as I'm finishing up editing this video, but unfortunately, this lot is not playable. I am so sorry. I will update on Twitter when it is ready because it's gonna take me some time. It probably won't be for a little while, like till next month until I go in and actually fix this lot, and I don't really know what I'm gonna have to do to it, but basically it's unplayable. All those stairs, like I thought the Sims could like walk on whatever terrain, but apparently these Sims cannot get up to the house. Even my attempt at putting like little stairs in there to go up the hill did not work. And they're standing outside freezing to death. Again, like I said, this lot is not playable. But hey, it looks cool. I will like pin it to my Twitter board for a while when it is playable and I upload it to the gallery. or The Sims. Actually, I think I'm putting them together as a whole. I haven't added them to the gallery just yet. If you want to download this lot and these Sims, I will upload them to the gallery, and I will leave the information in the description box below. By the way, I really hate my profile name, and one of these days I'm gonna see if I can't change it, but my profile name is exofrabbit1 or something like that, and I think I just had to pick. I really wanted Frabbit because that's Simlish, and but it just sounds stupid. I've had it for so long. Oh my gosh, I've had it since like The Sims 2. We don't always make the best choices when we're younger. It used to be private. They didn't have this whole sharing system. If I had known everyone would want to maybe know my profile name, I might have come up with something a little bit better. So anyways, that's what I got. Don't judge. Anyways, I really hope that you like this, and I know it's a little bit longer, but I do plan on some specific secret builds. I will give you a hint from another recent read, and I would be really interested to know what you may guess. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, you can give me a like and subscribe, and you can even hit the bell if you would like to be notified when I post new content. Bye.